Hi everyone, I'm Julia, your host of the Mentorship podcast. This is a very special episode in collaboration with the Pre-Law Association at York University. Typically, our episodes feature guests from different fields who discuss their career path and industry, but we are introducing bonus episodes where we step out of our traditional conversation structure. By doing this, we can dive further into a specific professional stage within a certain career path to help give you more detailed insight to help guide you through your professional career. Another exciting announcement is that we will be introducing video formats to our episode. So if you prefer to watch the episode, you can find us on YouTube and the link will be in the episode description. The new season of the Mentorship podcast will be returning in February with all new guests from different fields. So make sure to stay tuned, and that will also include video episodes. Today we are joined by Yosser Kareem, the head chair of the Pre-Law Association at York University, also known as PLAY. It's a community for York students to network and work towards their goals within the legal field. Yosser is currently in her last year of her bachelor's degree at York University, where she's pursuing an honors degree in psychology, and she's also working towards a career in law. In this conversation, we highlight the undergraduate stage of a career path in law, and so we'll be covering topics like LSAT preparations, law school applications, mock trial competitions, and a lot more. So here to mentor us, it is Yosser Kareem from York University's Pre-Law Association. Welcome, Yosser, to the podcast. How are you feeling?
I'm good, Julia. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited because, like I mentioned to you, this is a first of many for us. It's our first bonus episode, first video podcast, first collab. So I'm really happy to be doing it with you. And before we get all into it, I want to start with who you are and have you tell us a bit about what you're studying right now and what your career goals are as well.
Thank you so much, Julia, for having me. First of all, I'm honored to be here. I love your podcast. The Menth Projects does so much. I think even for students that just want to know what their careers are like.
Yeah.
As we talked about, I'm kind of on the other side of this where I want to prep students on how to make the most out of their undergrads. A little bit about me is I'm a pre-law student. I go to York University. I'm in my fourth year, finishing honors in psychology, and I've decided to stay a little bit longer to do a professional certificate in public law and policy, just a little something to add to the law application. And we got connected, you and I, through my experience at PLAY. PLAY is the Pre-Law Association at York. I am the head chair of PLAY, and today we're just here to talk about everything that it takes to be the best applicant in law school.
We got connected through Noreen's podcast because she's a lawyer and she was representing law in that episode. And that's how we kind of started talking how we should do an episode where we kind of focus in on one stage of the whole career path to become a lawyer because it's a whole process. So it's really exciting because, again, among all the first, this is the first time we've had a student on. We've always had somebody on where they've completed their education and they're, in their professional area. So this is really exciting to now we can really get into the details of it all. And talk about it, especially as you are from PLAY, and we can talk about the pre-law steps.
Absolutely.
So let's also get into a little bit about PLAY and what their mission is and what resources or events that they help students with specifically so that we kind of understand what we're going to be talking about today too.
Absolutely. So PLAY, like I mentioned, is the Pre-Law Association at York. It is the club that students go to of all majors to find something that connects them to law school. We basically have 5 major pillars: volunteer, mock trial, outreach, we do advocacy, and then we make sure that they have connections and things of that sort, that everything that it takes to make them a good applicant for law school. So advocacy would mean workshops and teaching them how to talk like a lawyer, how to think like a lawyer, how to present themselves like a lawyer, so that once they go to law school, they don't feel like they're completely lost. They have some sort of background, even if their current major isn't law related. Because the thing about law school is you could be any major, right? You don't have to have anything law related. Like I mentioned, I'm in psychology. A lot of people do that. One, because they want to have a backup plan. And I think two is a lot of people, they realize they like law halfway through. And then the good thing is you don't have to change your undergrad. You could just keep going and then take the steps that you need. As long as you have the grades to take, you can apply to law school. Another thing we do is LSAT prep. So we basically prep students on how to study for the LSAT, what it would look like, some tips. We work with Legally Bright, which is a LSAT tutoring based with Osgood students. And it basically gives them, again, tips and resources and one-on-one tutors. And we also do things like court trips so that students actually can immerse themselves in the law space without having to go to law school and feeling like this is the first time for me. Right. So that was basically what Play's mission is.
So it's a lot going on. Do they also kind of help with the application part of it, whether it be them giving tips or even connecting the members to people who can give tips on, you know, the LSATs and stuff like that, which we'll get into, but is that also something that they look for?
Absolutely. Okay. So the good thing about being at York is that Osgood is on campus and Osgood is the leading law school, obviously one of the leading law schools in Ontario. So it's amazing that we could just go over there and be like, hey, we need some tips. What were the applications like this year? We can connect our students with a lot of the professors there. We do a lot of panels so that they can get to know what first year of law class would look like, the type of space that they would be in. A lot of our events that we hold for advocacy are actually in Osgood so that they can kind of be in the class. I think it takes a lot to kind of picture yourself in that space to kind of manifest it and everything. So yeah, I think that's an amazing thing about having Osgood on campus.
So then do a lot of the law students from Osgood, do they connect with you as well and connect with the undergrads?
Absolutely. So one of the resources I mentioned was Legally Bright. Co-founded by Osgood students, and the tutors are Osgood students, but also there are a lot of last year's executives. We were only founded last year at Play, actually. They went on to Osgood. So we have that sort of connection with them. And of course, the students that are there already in Osgood, we could just go over and ask, hey, we need help, that sort of thing. What was your application like? What was your LSAT like? They give us tips and sort of stuff like that. It's a very open process.
And that's nice when you're kind of a part of a new society or a committee or a student group in general. And then having those executives now be law students, that's such like a great connection. How did you end up getting involved in Play specifically? Because I can imagine there's many student groups, many initiatives out there where you can either explore law or build your resume regardless of what your intentions are. So how come you ended up getting involved with Play?
So I actually was a part of many other clubs before I got involved in Play. And that is why I'm in a higher position. I was a part of Criminology Society because there wasn't yet a pre-law association at York. And through Criminology Society, I discovered that Play exists, and that was the year that it was founded. So it was kind of like I had the history of clubs that were law related, things that were psychology related to my undergrad, but there was nothing specifically to law. So when I discovered that their Play exists, it was like an amazing thing. I joined it last year. I was director of operations, and then it moved on, elections happened, and then now we're head chair.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing about how student groups start off and how they grow. Like, this is just the beginning for Play. Absolutely. I also was a part of student groups, some being really early in the stages, and you get to make such a big difference because you're like bringing all the events and bringing all the operations into Play, no pun intended, for the first time. So that's really fun too. Why don't we get into some of the pre-law steps that students want to hear about, want to get some advice on, specifically if they're interested in law. So we kind of already touched on a little bit how you can go about choosing your undergrad and how you can come from any undergrad degree and go and pursue law school. But let's kind of take it back a bit. Let's say someone's in high school, they're listening in right now. They are interested in being a lawyer, but they need to complete this first step of having their undergrad. What do you and what does Play usually recommend in that kind of case, even for someone maybe even switching their undergrad, in terms of what degree they should kind of pursue and look into if law is a goal down the line?
This is as simple as it may come. Choose whatever is easiest. Choose whatever will get you the highest marks. Because there's a reason that law allows you to apply with any undergrad that you want. They want you to showcase your strength. Choose an undergrad that you know that you will get the best grades at, because good marks are the bare minimum in law school. So you have to make sure that you have the base set before you can even think about anything else. Choose an undergrad that you think is the easiest for you and that you would get the highest marks in. For me, I chose psychology because I took a psychology class in high school in grade 11 and I fell in love with it. And I was like, this would be a great backup if, God forbid, law school doesn't happen. And I loved that I can join psychology now and get good marks and enjoy my undergrad. Because you have to enjoy what you learn or else you'll hate it and you're not going to do anything and you'll get bad marks. So you got to make sure it's something you love and it's something it's easy.
Yeah, I've heard that too, where you want to choose something where you're going to excel because the grades are a big thing in the applications. And I like the fact how even you mentioned how it can act kind of as a fallback or just allow yourself to open more doors. I'm such a big advocate for that. We talk about that a lot on the podcast. And every time at the end when I ask my guests, you know, what is your biggest piece of advice? They always say, keep your options open, keep the doors open. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing too, because, you know, you might kind of do things along the way and realize that law might not be it for you, and that's okay too. But at least you're pursuing an undergrad that's sparking your interest. Or you can somehow make it interdisciplinary and combine it with law later too, in a way. And as we're seeing on the podcast, there's so many ways to combine interests.
Many ways. I'm so glad you mentioned that because, like you said, there's so many different avenues of law. Let's say, for example, that you realize that you like science. And you do a biology undergrad, a health science undergrad. Then you decide you like law, you want to consider going to law school, you take a LSAT, you realize you like it, so you apply. There are avenues in law that are related to medicine, so you can mix what you love with law. It's not like one or the other. It's definitely, you can find something that can join the two.
Yeah, and I love that you use the example of science.
Right?
Since I'm coming from a chemistry background, I love promoting science any way we can. In terms of extracurriculars and volunteering, those kind of opportunities, in terms of people who might be interested in law or building their resume, trying to explore what kind of volunteer and extracurriculars are out there for undergrad students.
So it really depends on your campus. I can only speak for York, but I know that a lot of campuses are open and they have a lot of different opportunities for different majors. And just like your undergrad, you do not have to have a law-related club. You can have something that can showcase that you're a part of the community, something that can showcase that you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself, that you're not just in it for the money, because realistically, that's what they're after. Make sure that it's something that you love doing so that you can do it consistently. And it doesn't have to be big positions, as long as they are diverse and you're a well-rounded student. So you have a little bit of everything in there, a little bit of sports, maybe if you like music, maybe if you want to do some volunteering at food drives, whatever it may be well-rounded, show that you want to be a part of the community, because that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, for sure. I think it also depends on what your goal is with the extracurriculars. Are you trying to explore law more? Are you trying to gain some skills specifically in law? Or are you just trying to expand your skill set in general? Or dabble in other interests too and somehow bring them together later on? So I think, yeah, for sure, all those options are available. I feel like for me, I focused a lot on leadership when I was in undergrad. I kind of fell in love with just learning the operations of things and running a business like a student group, because in some cases there's student groups where they allocate a lot of money. Like when I was working at TMU, I was part of RSS, the Science Society, and we had a budget of $200,000. And when I was VP Operations, I was working with VP Finance and the president to figure out how to use that money, how to spend that money. I was signing checks. It was a lot of responsibility, and we were a new faculty.
Absolutely.
And a new society. So yeah, it really depends on what kind of skills you want to build too. If you are trying to get involved in extracurriculars that are more specific to law, are there ones that you recommend, especially if someone's maybe not in a law-related undergrad, like how we talked about, but they want to just kind of learn more about it? Maybe they're not even that knowledgeable on it. They're kind of like testing it out. What kind of recommendations do you have in that regard?
I think the best and most common probably activity on campus, across campuses you'd find, is a mock trial club. Because mock trials not only push you to think like a lawyer, gives you the tricks, but it also immerses you into the courtroom. It makes you understand and not just watch. It forces you to think like a lawyer and act like a lawyer. And at the end of the day, you kind of get to learn skills that are different than just watching a case, whether it be real or just a mock case, because you get to know what it feels like to work really hard for a character, whether it be real or not. And sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. And there's a feeling that comes with that I think mock trial teaches pre-law students that nothing else would teach. So I think it's very important that students find some sort of mock trial program that could teach them how to be a lawyer.
Yeah. Are you involved in those?
Yes. Okay. So Play actually has one of our 5 pillars is mock trial. So we do have an internal competition and we have an external competition. Internal are teams that are within York that just want to compete against each other and are still learning the ropes. External are more of teams that want to compete against other universities, like Western, UTM, McMaster, whatever it may be.
And before Play, or even now, were you involved in actually participating in the mock trials and competing, or just organizing now?
So before Play, there was actually no mock trials at York. So we're very proud of that as Play. And so last year, it was the first year that we competed against UTM. And I was a part of leading one of the teams that competed. And it was a lot of fun. There were about 40 teams and York placed bronze out of them, and it was their first year, so we were very, very, very proud of them. So now that team that won is our current executives, because we felt like they were elected and they know the ropes, and they now can teach it to all our new members, incoming and old and all that.
Okay, so the executives participate along with the members as well? Absolutely.
It's definitely a learning experience for everyone involved, and that's why it's so much fun, because even when you're on the executive side of it, you are learning things. You're obviously learning how to be a leader, but you're also learning to delegate the responsibilities that you're trying to teach other people. And you're taking in, like, I think a lot of people will learn by explaining things, and I find that my advocacy executives are getting better every time they teach an advocacy workshop, or my mock trial executives are being better lawyers every time they teach members how to become better lawyers. So I think it's kind of like a give and take relationship.
Can you give us a bit of an inside scoop on what that mock trial competition was like?
Absolutely.
In terms of, how you prepared, what you were actually working on, and how you interacted with your team, how you interacted with the competitors as well.
Absolutely. So we were invited by UTM, University of Toronto, Mississauga. We were trained by them because it was our first year. They kind of came in for a couple days. They delegated leaders and they kind of showed us the case. How the mock trial competitions work is when a university invites other universities over, they usually have a case ready. Cases are usually provided by OGEN. That's the Ontario mock trial kind of like resource place. Clubs and universities that are attending take that case and prep for about 2 weeks. So that's what we did. We took the case, we prepped for about 2 weeks. And from there, everybody did not know what side they were going to do, whether they were going to be defense or crown.
Okay.
So you have to prepare for both.
Okay.
And the day of, you could be either or.
Okay.
How it works is you obviously compete against each team and then you go up until there's a last one or last three standing.
Yeah.
And the judges are actual lawyers.
Oh, okay.
So that was really interesting and really fun because they have kind of like a sense of judgment that's obviously a lot more trustful, I guess one could say. Yeah. So because they've obviously worked it, they've been there, they've walked it. They're like, the judge wouldn't believe that.
Yeah,
and when you say that, you're like, obviously he knows.
Yeah.
So it's things like that was really interesting, really fun to work with a lawyer one-on-one. And when you make mistakes, it's not the end of the world, but then you still kind of feel, like I said earlier, that feeling of like, I worked hard for my client, this hurts me type of thing.
Yeah.
So you go on, you could either do defense or crown every day, like you switch between teams. So you could keep doing crown, defense, crown, things like that. It's basically a flip of a coin. That's how it works.
Okay.
And basically until the last person standing. And everybody does, all 40 teams does one case.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the case on?
The case was about a man who murdered his girlfriend because he thought that she was an intruder. It was actually based on a true story. He shot her in the bathroom 3 times, and he thought that she was asleep next to him, but she was actually in the bathroom. He thought that she was the intruder in the bathroom.
Okay.
But many believe that he did it on purpose.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a back and forth. In real life, the client did go to jail for it, but he did go out. He's exonerated now. But it was really interesting to see how like this panned out in a mock trial.
Yeah. Is it usually criminal cases like that in the mock trials? Or could it be, anything?
To be honest with you, for the drama, it's usually criminal cases. Yeah, makes sense. But obviously it could be anything. It could be anything. Okay. But I find that criminal cases teach students the most because it requires, in my opinion, the most like skills. It just throws you in there. Yeah. It's kind of like fun for them as well because that's what they think of when they think of a mock trial.
Yeah.
If they want to do constitutional litigation, we think that Moot, which is another club that is at York, but at a lot of other universities in Canada, that actually argues the law rather than the case. So it would be charter laws that you would apply to certain things. So that's a little bit different than what Play does. Play does actual cases rather than charter. Okay. So it depends on what kind of thing you're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if someone was interested in that, they would have to look for something separate than the mock trial kind of competition.
Yes.
Okay.
Mock trials are more like defense versus crown. Moot is more you're arguing the law.
And in the mock trials, do you have someone acting as the client, like the person who committed the murder? Okay.
So mock trials are so much fun because everybody's acting. The lawyers are, obviously it's scripted, so they know what each person's saying because they work together. And the perpetrator, it's scripted. The victims, it's scripted. The witnesses, completely scripted.
Yeah.
So it's fun because even if you don't want to be a lawyer, you can take part in the mock trial.
Okay.
If you don't want to, practice law and you just want to look at it still, you could do that. It's fun to immerse yourself because when you're in it, when you're in the moments, you kind of have a different persona that comes on and you're just like, I got this. I'm going to fight for my client.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Did you watch Jury Duty on Amazon?
Yes.
I feel like in a way, even though that wasn't their intent, I'm like getting Jury Duty vibes of the mock trial.
That was crazy. Yeah. That was crazy.
It was so
but
good.
That's exactly what it is though. That's literally exactly what it is because the jury members all know that it's fake. Yeah. But maybe one of them, if one of them believes it, then maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. They're in their own world.
They're in their own world.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. The other question I have is networking opportunities.
Yes.
I know that you talked about, especially at York, you have the advantage of having the Osgoode Law students available to you during some events and stuff with Play. What do you have to suggest for that in terms of, how to find networking opportunities, what the goal of it should be, and, who you should be networking with too in undergrad?
Play has an amazing pillar, volunteer, that gets students connected with opportunities that are not only law related, but are community related. And through that, they're really good networking opportunities, because through volunteer, you can go connect with the person in charge and say, hey, I'm a pre-law student. I'm really interested in this. I'd like to keep working with you. So play kind of acts as that bridge between you and the person that you connect with. And it's kind of up to our members to keep their relationship going. We are kind of just give them the freedom of having a lot of options, because a lot of people just don't know where to get them from. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They don't even know that this is needed. So when they see that a law club is posting volunteer opportunities, something will ding in their head and they'll say, okay, maybe this is something that I need to get into for law school.
And so they're connecting with lawyers?
Right.
Okay, and just basically networking.
So it really completely depends on the opportunity. So for a lot of our professor panels, they're connecting with professors, whether it be Osgood professors, so they have kind of a little bit of an in, or it be professors at York, so that they can write them great recommendation letters, so that they can take their classes, things like that. Sometimes it's also lawyers panels. A lot of times they ask lawyers, our members, they ask them, if you guys are having internships, are you interested? Would you like one? That's kind of, again, the bridge that play connects them with. So it really completely depends, but there's a bunch of avenues that we connect them with.
Is that possible to do some sort of law internship while you're in undergrad, not studying law, not in law school? Is that something that you can already get involved with, or typically do people wait until law school?
Honestly, it completely depends on what you can handle. It's not easy being an undergrad student and having to partake in a law internship, because most of the time they would require hours that might not align with your class schedule. And like I said, class grades are the bare minimum. So if you feel like your grades are struggling, I wouldn't recommend that you add a law internship on top of that. I think if you're confident in your abilities to kind of juggle time and be able to manage a bunch of things at once, it's something that you should do, but not in the beginning of your undergrad. Definitely around third or fourth year. But the thing about being into law internships in your undergrad is you don't really have much to go for you. So you got to make sure you're big on club and networking to make up for your lack of being a law student. Because usually law internships are reserved for law students, but there are a select few undergrads that are amazing and significant that get plucked out to get early law internships, for sure.
Okay. How can they find those internships? Is it just, an online search? Is there a certain place, whether it be at York or just in general, that these things are advertised for?
I think most obviously LinkedIn. It's very good to search up law firms and see if they have any internships. Call them up. Be annoying and bring a resume and say, hey, I'm an eager pre-law student and I want to work here. What do you have? It really, really goes a long way that you're able to go out there. And even if they don't have anything available for you, I think they would take into account that you would go that far and would keep that resume in mind.
Yeah,
for sure.
Let's get into the law school preparation aspect of it, whether it be the LSATs and the application process. We'll kind of go through both. So LSATs, I can imagine, is a very intimidating, scary thing for students.
It's a lot on a person, but it's nothing like going to a courtroom and arguing for your client. I think LSAT is logic-based. A lot of people argue that it's not super law-related, but I think logic more so tests how your brain works, how quick you are in pattern think and working on the spot, catching things quickly, which is kind of needed as a lawyer, especially when you're doing something like cross-examination, having to talk to the witness without really preparing exact questions because you're examining them after they've been talked to by their lawyer. So it's things like that the LSAT kind of takes care of. The LSAT is not easy, and the LSAT is long, and the LSAT is stressful, but the LSAT is not impossible, and a lot of people have done it. You will not like your first mark always, and that's okay. Not everybody applies. Actually, most people don't apply with their first LSAT grade. A lot of people redo it until they're happy. I would say the safest grade would be a 160, because that's kind of like your golden ticket. But the great thing about law school applications is that they're holistic. So if you do bad on one of the sections, you can do good on another. The sections I'm speaking of are like your grades, your club involvement, your personal statement, your LSAT. So if your grades struggle, have a higher LSAT. If your LSAT is lower, have higher grades. Blow them with your personal statement. You know, there are things that can make up for the lacks in your application, and you can really harness them to your advantage.
Yeah. And so have you gone through this process yet, or are you going through it right now?
I'm actually going through it right now. It's really fun. So I'm in my 4th year, like I said, and because I've decided to stay an extra semester for the professional certificate, I've decided to turn back LSAT studying till afterwards. Personally, for me, I think I wouldn't want to mix up LSAT studying with my current studying, because again, I keep saying this, good marks are the bare minimum. Everybody that applies to law school knows they're smart. No one's going to apply with bad grades if they know that they're not going to make up for it in another way. So I think that I wanted to make sure that I have the best marks before I even think about LSAT studying. And the thing about studying for LSAT is that you can't pick it up and drop it. You have to do it consistently.
Yeah.
So you need to put up like 3 months at least of full-time LSAT studying. That is truly, honestly, the best and fastest way you can make sure you're successful. Because if you pick it up and drop it, you will forget. LSAT is about practicing skill and practicing a pattern, and it's not something you can like memorize really. So you just got to keep doing it and do it consistently.
It's interesting how you said how people do it more than once. That was my thought too, but then I heard some other perspectives where you only want to do it one time because it looks bad. I understand both cases. I feel like schools, especially after COVID now, they're a lot more understanding to just emotions and humanity in general. So I feel like they are more understanding to having, you know, more than one LSAT attempt. So that's good to hear too, that that's something that's available to students. And what about like the actual study prep? How do you plan to go about your study prep? I know you said 3 months, but in terms of how you're planning out your days, how you're going to learn the material, how do you go about that? And what resources are out there for students?
First things first, do a diagnostic. Find out where you are, where your strengths and where your weaknesses are. Khan Academy is a great resource for that. KHAN Academy. Just search LSAT prep, do a diagnostic, and figure out where you're at. It won't be good, it won't be easy, and it'll be confusing. That's the point. So that you know where you need to focus on, where your strengths and your weaknesses are. You also have to know what your study habits are like. If you need a tutor or not. If you need to study by yourself. If you need to study in a group. If you need to be able to juggle something else. But you also have to take breaks. Because if you just do full LSAT studying without taking care of your body and your brain for 3 months, you will hate it. And that's not the point. That's not the point.
I mean, even on that subject, I kind of have a question on what you have learned in terms of like balancing and everything throughout your undergrad so far.
Have a calendar. Have a physical calendar. A physical calendar goes a long, long way. Don't do more than you can handle. Don't say yes if you know that you can't handle it on your plate. Kind of know where you're at. Know what you could take. And be honest with yourself. Be honest with others.
What about recharging and making sure that that part is balanced as well, not just your study schedule and your work schedule?
Right. I think you need to have hard stop days. And you need to just put boundaries within yourself, your work, your school. Decide which days are delegated for classes, for homework, for assignments, which days are dedicated for your job, which days are dedicated for your friends and family, which days are for you. And the important thing about that is knowing that at the end of the day, if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of anything else. So you really should prioritize yourself if you care about finishing everything else. Because if you're tired and outworked and can't do anything, nothing will get done.
Yeah. And I feel like there's two sides to it. I think there's one side where you have to make every minute count in a way. Like, I remember if I had an hour in between classes, I wouldn't just go on my phone or just, watch Netflix until my next class. I would work on an assignment or finish a study note for a certain chapter. Like, make all those minutes count. I think I took it to a point where I was making everything count and then I didn't have any off days. So I think, that point of having at least one day, I think I would have benefited from having a Sunday off, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's get into the law school application process. What is that typical process like, and how early do you start preparing for it?
I think as soon as you decide that you want to get into law school, you have to keep that application in mind. Again, I keep saying it. Good grades, good grades, good grades. That is your format for your application. That is your base. That is the bare minimum. Next up, again, your LSAT. Consider your grade. 160 is the mark that kind of gets you everywhere you want. That is the grade. That is your golden ticket, your 160. Then you have your resume, which is all the jobs that you've worked, all the clubs that you were a part of, all the volunteering that you did, things like that, dates, your role, all of these things are going to have a part of your resume for law school. Then you have your personal statement. Every law school will ask of a basic personal statement, as in you can choose whichever topic you talk about. Make it interesting, make it about you. Don't make it about anything besides why your struggles and where your background makes you a good law student and in turn a good lawyer. And then you have your recommendations from your professors. Usually that is about 2 minimum per law school. Others will ask for more, but 2 is usually your safe spot. Some law schools will also ask for a recommendation from an employer. So you also have to take into account what law school you want and what that law school is after. I think it's really useful to kind of have a chart, label every law school you want, what grade they're after, what LSAT mark, and so on and so forth. And because they will not all be the same.
Yeah.
Some law schools will focus more on LSATs. Some law schools will allow GPAs that are lower. Some law schools focus on the best 20 credits. Some law schools will focus on all 4 years. So your GPA will not be the same in every law school, which is also, I think, is a really fun perk. Because if you know that you did your best in only your last 2 years, but you struggled in your first 2, that's okay, because there are law schools that only consider your best 2 years. So that's something that is really, I think, helpful for a lot of law students that don't trust their GPA completely.
How do you find what school, what university focuses more on LSAT? Do they just say that on their... Oh, okay.
It's actually a lot easier than it might sound to find. You just go to the law school that you're thinking of and you go to their admissions requirements, and it'll tell you what they focus more on, what they require, what their median was for the incoming year.
Okay.
So it kind of gives you an idea of where current students are at. But if you read a median that is higher than yours, don't be discouraged. Just remember, that's a median. There are people that are less. And that's just for this year, you know? It could be lower next year. It could be whatever. It'll change every year. But yeah, just search up what law school you're interested in, and the admission requirements will be there on their website.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to get into the reference letters a bit, because I feel like where you're at right now, you've probably thought a lot about that.
Yes.
You've spent time making connections. So how was that process like for you? Even if you don't know exactly who you're going to ask yet for your reference letters, can you talk a little bit about how you made those connections with whether it be professors or employers throughout your undergrad, and how that will be a part of your law school application process?
Absolutely. So I think you have to find a professor that you like and likes you, obviously. Have a professor that you have a long-term relationship with, and it's kind of a pro if they're law related, but they don't have to be. They do not have to be. But if they can speak about how your skills could relate to law, that would be amazing. But the same is true for any reference letter you get for any graduate school that you apply to. As long as the professor that is speaking about you could say the best things, have an understanding of your best skills, and knows what it takes to get into law school.
So have you already kind of gone through that process? Are you able to kind of speak a little bit on it firsthand? Absolutely. Or are you still, getting there?
I think I've eyed a couple. I've eyed my public law professor. He's somebody that I'm working with for my certificate. We have a great relationship because I really enjoyed his class. I enjoyed the way he teaches. He's written a bunch of letters because he's in the law field, and I work with him even beyond the course because he's a part of play when we do professor panels. So I kind of have that connection, and that's what's really helpful about clubs, is that when you're done with classes and you kind of don't have that connection anymore, you can rely on your club to connect you with the professors that you need.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times students are wondering, well, how do I even connect with professors? Do I just hang around after the lecture and show them that I'm interested in learning more, or I have questions, which is definitely a way,
absolutely.
Or office hours. But I think, for me, coming from a science background, there was lots of ways to get involved with professors because lots of them had their own research labs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's interesting on the side of where you might have a degree that's not really research-based, you can still get involved with them through clubs and things like that.
Yes. As long as the professor knows you, I think you can prove yourself by just being a good student. You don't have to be the type of one that kind of looms around or kind of sucks up to the professor, because they will see through that. They will see through that. Be yourself, be the best type of student that you are, and make yourself known, make yourself seen. Make sure that the professor knows you by name. And a lot of times it's easier to get recognized in smaller classes, so seminars. That's why it's better to think about it in your upper years, because that's when the classes start to get smaller.
And have it be authentic, like you said.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Show something that you're interested in, whether it's the club or the research, something else, maybe an exchange that they're a part of. It has to be something that you're actually interested in, and then somehow you get connected with that professor.
And based off your law school, it doesn't only have to be professors. It could also be an employer, especially if that's a long-term employer. And I also am thinking about asking my employer. I'm an optometrist assistant. And so I think it's really good to have a doctor say, hey, I think she'd be a great law student. And I think the same is true for a lot of applicants. You need to think about what type of job do you want to work in your undergrad, where you think that the employer's opinion about you would benefit you in law school. That is why as soon as you're thinking about law school, you got to think about applications. You don't have to start doing it, but you got to have it in the back of your brain and plan ahead.
And what about the structure for the personal statement? I know we talked about how that's your chance to talk about any lower grades or lower LSAT scores, struggles, whatever. In addition to that, how do you kind of go about a personal statement? How do you make it true to you? What have you learned so far in your process?
I think you have to figure out a way to stand out. It's very easy to want to go the struggle route, especially as an immigrant myself, to use that. But I thought to myself, everyone's going to do that. Everyone's going to do that. And they're going to be tired of hearing that. And I would be tired of writing about it. So I wanted a topic that would stick out, something that they haven't heard before. I would recommend a very good personal statement. It's I hate the letter S. It's very popular. I'm not sure if you've read it, but it's basically about a student who's hates the letter S because of parents. They have one parent, And so when everybody says parents, it makes them hate the letter S. And their entire personal statement was about why they hate the letter S. And it got them into Harvard.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
Things like that are what catches the eye of your law school application. So you don't really want to be basic. You don't want to be redundant. And you don't want to do a topic that even you yourself would be bored about. You know, your personal statement doesn't have to be just about why you are lacking in some regards. It's also an opportunity for you to be creative, and you should use it as an opportunity for you to be creative.
Yeah, and I remember what Noreen was talking about in her episode as well, connecting it back to law and why law is important to you, things like that. If you have certain goals with law, I imagine you could talk about it in your personal statement too, or connect it back to, you know, something in your life that you're talking about as well.
Absolutely. Let's say, for example, you want to be an immigration lawyer. That is a perfect time to say, I came from a place that worked with immigration lawyers. I respected how they worked. Make it personal. Make it, again, why your background, whether it be good or bad or whatever it may be, makes you a good law student and in turn a good lawyer.
Where did you learn all of this insight from? Because you still haven't gone through some of these processes. So, but yet you seem so well informed and also like confident. I love how you're already saying, you know, if you don't get the grades that you're looking for, it's okay. You know, you can do this and that. So that's really interesting to hear, you know, where you're at. And yeah, where did you get your advice from? And
my mentors.
Yeah.
It was the founders of Play, Paul, Lynn, and Despina. You'll find them on our Instagram. They really helped me understand the process and calmed me down. They were doing the application while I was kind of able to look back without having to stress about doing the application. So I was kind of able to see not just their stuff, but all of their people around them, their cons, their pros, how they were still able to get into their best places. And I think a little bit is also genetic. I think there is a lot of law in my family. So I think I have a lot of like in me to just know that like I'll figure it out, even if as long as I want to do it, I'm gonna figure it out.
And how about finding a law school that speaks to you? Because I know there's one side of it where it's, you know, whatever you get into, you're going to be happy for because it's a competitive process.
Absolutely.
But, you know, maybe for people who have a few offers that they receive and they're trying to figure out what is the best law school for them, what have you heard about that? And how do you think you'll go about that approach as well?
I think two things matter the most: location and the focus of the law school. Like universities, law schools have avenues of law that they are best known in, that they could give students their best networks in. And so you kind of have to do a little bit of research, a little bit of digging, a little bit of talking, ask around to find out what that law school is best equipped for. Are they better known for business? Are they better for networking students to do like humanitarian law and so on and so forth? Is your law school the type of law school that favors LSAT over grades? Those things also play part. So what is your law school's focus? Location also, I think, plays a part because where you go to law school will set your future. Where you go to law school will be where the type of law that you study, which will be where you have your bar exam, which will be where you do law, where you practice law. And that kind of that sets the bar for a big chunk of your life, unless you want to get up and do it again, which who wants to do that? So you really, really have to think about where you want to spend the rest of your life, which I know is a really big loaded question. And trust me, I'm struggling with that myself now too, for the longest time. And I believed I wanted Osgood. And now I'm thinking like, I'm not sure that I want to practice law here for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? So that's something that you want to think about. Location and what your law school focuses on.
When you talk about that, are you thinking even international or even giving advice to people about, you know, you can expand your scope internationally? Is that what you mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there are so many amazing internships that you can go to as an undergrad student that is overseas. Ozturk is an Australian law school internship program that connects undergrad students with law classes that will prepare you to go to law school in Australia. That is such a good resource for students that are thinking about going abroad. But even things like, for example, Windsor Law, they have a dual program that allows you to practice both in the States and here.
Okay.
So things like that, like how far you want to spread your wings is completely up to you, but keep in mind that likely where you study is where you will practice.
Well, Yosser, this has been so informative. Thank you so much for coming in and talking with us and giving all your insight. I also want to give you a chance to just talk about anything that Play might be doing right now.
Thank you so much, Julia, for having me. Again, it's an honor to be here. I had so much fun talking to you and informing all your listeners about what it takes to make the most in your undergrad. Play is here for any of York students' pre-law needs. What we have coming up is our mock trial program. There will be some external competitions taking place across other universities. So if you'd like to take part in those competitions, find us at PLAY York U.
Okay.
Play York U.
Well, thank you again for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you in the future telling us what law school is like.
Absolutely. I'll be back in a couple of years. Give me a couple of years, Julia.
Thank you so much to Yosser and Play for collaborating with us on this episode about a journey in pre-law. We hope that you found this conversation informative. We also hope that you enjoyed our first bonus episode, as it allows us to step outside of our typical conversation structure and give more perspective on a specific part of a career path. We are really excited to do more of these in the future. If you are interested in hearing more about a career in law, I highly recommend one of our previous podcast episodes featuring Noreen, a lawyer in the Department of Justice in Ottawa, who we also mentioned a few times in this episode today. We are also introducing an anonymous feedback form for any requests on what you want to learn more about or who you want to see in future episodes. We would really appreciate your feedback and making sure that we can get you content that you are interested in. The links for both Noreen's episode and the feedback form can be found in the description. We will be back with our 4th season on February 6th. This season features all new guests from different industries who will be breaking down their career path, so make sure to stay tuned. In the meantime, you can connect with us and follow us on @MentProjects on all social media platforms for updates and more mentorship resources. We are also now on YouTube with our video episodes, so you can subscribe there as well to support us. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you back in a couple of weeks.